Hi everyone, Alexandra Jarrett, Jupiter returns here with your weekly astrology forecast on March the 9th, 2020. We're covering March the 9th to the 15th. Thank you so much for joining me. And those of you who watched last week's forecast, you will recall that towards the end of the broadcast, I explained that as we awoke on Monday, we would wake up to volatility, to say the least, within the stock markets. And of course, here we are now. We find ourselves with some substantial drops going on. That's basically down to what we've had influencing that situation is Venus over here in Taurus, who has come up to meet Uranus, the planet of instability. Uranus wants change. That's the MO of Uranus. Uranus wants things to be different. It wants things to move into the future. Taurus rules our resources. And so this isn't just the stock market volatility. It's the situation where we've got changes in terms of unforeseen, unexpected, shocking events with regards to food, because Taurus also rules food. It's the resources of life, the things that keep us going. It's our survival stuff. So we've seen some panic buying, and that's absolutely Uranus combined with Venus. Venus rules money, spending, shopping, buying food. So yes, we've seen unexpected events, and we'll see a bit more of that, I think, to come as well. Instability, or just general feelings of instability about the survival items, the resources that life depends upon, whether that's petrol in our cars because the oil prices have dropped, whether that's, is there going to be food on the supermarket shelves, whether it's, you know, the actual drops in the market. I'm looking to have a radical shift in what it is that we value. This is what's behind this, and this is how it connects into the bigger picture that, of course, we have going over here in fellow Earth sign Capricorn with Pluto and Saturn, which of course is where this is all started from. This is that deeper, more potent background energy that's really set up the whole of 2020 in terms of Pluto bringing a death and rebirth crisis point to Capricorn, which is the structure and the system, how we currently have things organized to meet our needs. Saturn, of course, being the authorities, and we're seeing more, and we will continue to see more of the Saturnian influence as well, because Saturn wants to restrict things. Saturn wants control. Saturn wants order. Saturn wants to bring stability, and that usually is through some kind of discipline. So we will see restrictions on movement, restrictions on social gatherings, restrictions on what we can buy, you know, starting to ration products and all of this thing, because Saturn is trying to almost to fight back with Pluto. Pluto's trying to bring this radical change to a sign that doesn't want change. Capricorn is an earth sign. It's ruled by Saturn. It likes things to stay as they are. It likes tradition. It likes things to stand the test of time. So it doesn't take very kindly, really, to Pluto coming along and going, no, this isn't working, it's got to change. So Saturn's kind of fighting back, and this is how we will see our authorities kind of fighting back against to try and prevent this change from happening. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we move through the week. Because yeah, there's more of that to come on the horizon. So Venus, Uranus, in a more of an individual microcosmic perspective, this can be, you know, surprising events in your personal life related to your friends and your friendships, because Uranus very much is the sign of our networks, how we connect with each other as well with Venus. So just to give you an example, a very treasured friend of mine, Venus and Uranus, treasured friend, showed up yesterday and surprised me with a huge bunch of beautiful spring flowers. And I wasn't expecting it, and it really lifted my spirits, because I've got, as you might be able to see, I'm not sure if you can actually on the camera, I've got this swelling here, which has gone down quite a lot now, thankfully. And that's actually due to Jupiter and Mars, which I'll talk about later in the week as well. But so these surprisingly pleasant occurrences, being shocked by love, is something that can happen at this time as well, or falling for someone unusual, someone that you might not ordinarily go with. It's great for making internet connections with people. Venus wants connection. She wants to bring things together and relate. She wants relationship. And Uranus is the digital realm. So interactions of that nature online can peak at this time. The only sort of hesitation there is that with Uranus is not renowned for things lasting for a long time. So just bear that in mind in the background if that kind of thing is showing up. So that's where we find ourselves as we sort of come into a new week. We've got Jupiter now very, very close. If we just refocus ourselves into the stuff that's going on in the background up there in Capricorn, we've got Saturn really nearing the end of the journey through Capricorn. We've got Mars, you know, Mars is considered to be exalted in the sign of Capricorn, and an interpretation of that is that we are more likely to see the more desirable effects of Mars potentially in a sign where it's exalted. And that would be more motivation, more mojo, more passion. Essentially, speaking as someone who has their natal Mars in Capricorn, it's a huge amount of resilience and tenacity. You know, but Mars is very individualistic, and it will always be that way, irrespective. So I think when Mars starts to move closer to those bigger planets in Capricorn, we're going to see a more resilient expression of the individual. Just at a time when I anticipate that the authorities are going to want to put more and more and more restrictions on how we are able to be free and independent. So there could be a bit of a clash there coming up. So Monday, we have later on today, another reason why matters we're going to peak today is that we have the moon now in Virgo, another earth sign, so lots of earth energy around today. And when the moon gets to 19 degrees, 4 o'clock this afternoon in the UK, we will have the Virgo full moon. So this is the peak potent fruition point of the lunar cycle that was started with the new moon back at the end of August. So if you think back to matters that were going on in your life then, see how things are showing up now. This is the cosmic mirror being held up. When we have the full moon, messages are generally reflected back to us through interactions with the other. Okay, so people show up as that mirror. So pay attention to your interactions with other people today and see what's showing up for you. We've got the sun today in Pisces meeting up with Neptune. So when obviously the full moon is when the moon and the sun are in opposition to each other. So it's the opposing aspects on this axis, which is Virgo and Pisces. So Pisces is all about the spirit world. You know, it's about moving into an altered state of consciousness. It's about understanding there is a higher meaning to life. It's not just all about what Virgo likes, which is the practical day-to-day organization of life. And, you know, just organizing kind of, Virgo likes to use its hands. It wants to do something very tangible and practical and very much embodied, okay, as an earth sign. It's very much about our physical incarnation, whereas Pisces is the spiritual aspect of the self. So they are polar opposites, and there's always this battle going on within us, that we are spirits kind of trapped essentially in our flesh suit that we're wearing for the duration of this lifetime. And somehow we have to find the balance between those two sides of the self. With the sun, with Neptune right now, that's going to bring our attention, our focus, the sun, to the Neptunian side of ourselves. But this could actually, I feel, given the wider context of what we have going on, this could really lead to just a need to check out, you know, Neptune's understanding, the Piscean spirituality of the higher realm, understands that we are not entirely of this material earth plane that we find ourselves on. And as such, there's a sense of control, a distorted kind of sense of control in knowing that we can find that space somehow. And it does that via making us want to escape reality, to check out of reality. And so that's why Neptune is so strongly associated with, you know, drugs that can just take us out of the here and the now, drinking, going to the movies, anything that involves the fantasy realm. It's just like, I can't do reality right now. It's the disassociation. And you get this with a lot of very Neptunian people, is that when it's not fully a kind of, I can't think of the word, when it's fully embraced, we can become aware of the need to dissociate with reality, and we can catch ourselves doing that. And that is the kind of the typical, I don't want to listen to the news, I don't want to know about the bad stuff, the negative stuff that's happening in the world, because I want to be in my own reality, which is, you know, much nicer and much more pleasant. And yeah, we do need to do that at some times, but we also have to face the reality. Full moon in Virgo, facing the reality that actually we are part of the earth plane. And so we need to give some attention to that, and we need to keep a foot in that camp, because we do have a physical body that needs honoring just as much as our spiritual body. So it's finding the balance between the spiritual bypassing and the kind of the reality check of where we find ourselves. And yes, we can shape our reality to a certain extent, but there's the collective reality as well. And that's something that we have a bit of influence in, for sure, but we can only influence that if we're part of it. We can only bring about change if we are actually involved in it. So if we've isolated ourselves, if we've taken ourselves out, if we've dissociated with that, we don't have any influence over it anymore to bring about the change. And that change is what Neptune's all about. Neptune is one of the planets of change. So essentially, there could be a lot of feelings of wanting to check out of reality. Neptune, it's, you know, it's water. This is a wave. This is a tidal wave. We can all be feeling very overwhelmed at this point in time, and that can really just push us to want to, you know, go off and find some beautiful island somewhere to just escape humanity. But unfortunately, Neptune is what connects us all. We are very, very interconnected. And so unfortunately, we're seeing the reality of the vulnerability that comes when we are part of a very interconnected species, as the virus, the coronavirus, spreads through our connections. So just some thoughts on that full moon, is finding that balance between the spirit and the physical reality. Overnight, we have Mercury. This will be good news for some people. Mercury, back at 28 degrees of Aquarius, is actually going to go direct. So commencing the third and final phase of the retrograde process. Remember, it's not over until Mercury is out of shadow. So where Mercury has been creating disruptions, disorganization, messing around with travel plans, messing around with communications and communication devices, that kind of thing. Now is the time when things can start to get put back right. Okay, so as Mercury stations direct, there'll be another intense kind of hit of this Mercury energy, which again might add into the overwhelm kind of situation. But then as it moves direct, goes right back over to 12 degrees of Pisces, recovering all of those steps and any planets or angles that you have within that area of the chart, and just starting to rectify matters, starting to move things forward with more clarity, more organization. You've spotted where things now need a bit of change. You've spotted mistakes that needed your attention. You've been drawn within to areas of yourself that needed you to just give them some attention. And this is where things start to go right. So as you can see, there's nothing red, no planets are retrograde anymore as of this point. And again, that's a very potent position for us to be in, with every single planet now direct. This means that we are really steaming forward, moving into making a lot of progress with whatever it is that the planet's influence is trying to bring for us, be that what it is for you. So Tuesday we have Venus will start to separate from Uranus at this point, still a very close conjunction, but starting to separate, and will move into sextile the North Node. Now remember that the nodes are these the lunar nodes are these fated aspects, these points in the sky. They're not physical planetary bodies. These are what create our eclipses. So these are the points at which the universe kind of steps into life and says, a big shift needs to happen here, wherever the eclipses fall. So we've been experiencing eclipses in Cancer and Capricorn because of the nodes of the moon being there. So when planets fall into aspect with the nodes of the moon, we can discern from that essentially that there's an important message, that there's an important part of what's trying to come about. All right. The eclipses kind of act as like a defibrillator. When we have a heart attack or a heart event, our heart is essentially, it's got out of the right rhythm and it needs a shock. You know, it needs a shock to put it back in the right way. So the eclipses come along as these kind of shocking, universal defibrillator moments that just send this big jolt of energy through us to just get the rhythm back as it's supposed to be. And of course, this is very similar to how Uranus works as well. So as we've got Venus and Uranus moving into the aspect of sextile with the North Node and trine with the South Node on Tuesday. So this is really asking us, where we've had chance to sort of consider how our values and how our resources need to be radically changed. Okay, through the situations that we're experiencing in our lives right now, the things that we're seeing playing out. You know, if Saturn's effect is, I don't know, to keep people at home quarantined, that's such a Saturnian thing. If you're at home and you can't go out and you can't get your sense of value from the job that you do because you have to stay home and you can't earn any money, which is a Venus thing, and you can't go out to any social gatherings because that's been restricted, you can't go out shopping, and all of these things that we do, we're forced essentially to have a radical reshape of our values, things that people will be spending more time with their families, you know, unexpectedly. making an unexpected connection, Uranus, Venus, with the people that they love. One of the things that I've seen is that, the picture before the quarantines in China of the air pollution, all the factories, all the Capricorn system, the capitalist machine, churning out the fumes into the atmosphere. And then you see the satellite pictures of the atmosphere over China after the quarantine. It's clean, fresh air. There's no traffic on the streets. People can hear birdsong again. So it's these kind of events that I think are going to be just feeding into our destiny, our future path of what are the things that are truly important. When push comes to shove and we can't just rely on the status quo anymore, Uranus has shaken us out of that. What are the things that are going to be valuable to us? And with the North Node in Cancer, this is really saying we need more of the Cancerian influence in our lives and a little bit less of the Capricorn. We need to integrate what's been useful about the Capricorn system and release what's actually too old and outstayed its welcome now. So much releasing going on in Capricorn, so much. It's such a potently karmic time of it's the reckoning point of Capricorn, and it's saying, a lot of this is just too old and stale. It really has to go now. I did a bit because Mercury is stationing today, I did a bit of a word play on Cancerian to see if I could come up with something that's going to pull us into this re-establishing our values in light of the more Cancerian influence. And if you shuffle around the words, the letters in Cancerian, you get can I care, but with a little N that gets left out, unfortunately. I couldn't make it perfect, but hey, that's all part and parcel of being human, I guess. It's just accepting that things really ought not to be perfect. But yeah, can I care? Capricorn's system has been all about, it's a bit cold because it's ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is a very hard, cold planet. It's the planet of discipline and restriction and rules and, hardness, whereas Cancer is ruled by the moon. It's about softness and receptivity and the family and the home and what nourishes us. It's about feelings. It's about sensitivity. And, where we're trying to find the balance between the South and the North Node is saying, do we need to make a bit more room for the emotions of people, for the sensitivities of people, for caring about people's family? We're moving into a time when people are living longer, and that's putting, for example, pressure on the workers, Capricorn, to need to also be carers for older parents, for example. You've got people that are bringing up their children whilst looking after their parents as well in a caring capacity, and still coming under the financial and economic pressures of a system that says, actually, we need you to go out to work as well. So we're really under pressure to try and find a more appropriate balance than we currently have. Something needs to shift. So I think Tuesday will be a day where some of this realignment of values will fall into where we're moving, where we're destined to move. On Tuesday also, the moon will move into Libra. And again, Libra is a Venus-ruled sign, just like Taurus. So this is going to give us even more focus on the feminine, more focus on our values, more focus on love and the gentler side. But also in Libra, Libra is about balance. It's the scales. So it's all about helping us to find the fairness, the sweet spot in the middle. How do we need to compromise? Also on Tuesday, this is where the karma really starts to ramp up again, because at this point, Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, reaches the very final degree of Capricorn, the 29th degree of Capricorn, and it's going to stay there for quite a while because Saturn's moving pretty slowly now. So Saturn's actually going to be there until the 21st of the month. The last degree of Capricorn, it's known as an anaretic degree, which essentially just means it has more potency, it has more influence. It's almost like the planet gets there and it's like, wow, Capricorn's nearly finished. I've nearly got to the end of the time that I have to do what I came into this sign to do. So there's like an increase in the pressure for that planet as it's trying to complete the job there. So this is a very, very, very important and powerful point that we find ourselves in with Saturn at the very last degree of Capricorn. All right, Saturn is going to move into Aquarius for a short time, awakening, just giving a kind of a preview, a little trailer of what will happen when Saturn fully ingresses Aquarius later in the year. It will move in and then dip back out, but that's a little bit further. But for this week, Saturn at the very final degree of Capricorn, it's really saying this is time now. This is time for the karmic reckoning of what's going on here. So that's pretty important to take notice of. On Wednesday, we have the Sun now starting to separate from Neptune. We're into the second half of Pisces, which is the final sign of winter. So we're really powering towards spring at this point. And on Wednesday, the Sun will move into a sextile aspect with Jupiter, co-ruler of Pisces. So lovely receptivity between these two planets. The Sun is warm and bright and cheerful and happy and joyful. And Jupiter is about expansion and blessings and abundance. So this is energy that we can really tap into. A sextile needs us to put a bit of effort into to make that happen. But if we have the intention of tapping into that energy, it's absolutely there for us. And the question I would be asking myself, and I'd recommend you ask, is to just look at the bigger picture. Jupiter is expansion and it rules wisdom and philosophy. It wants you to really expand your mind and really look at the bigger picture. And it's all about what's the gold. Jupiter is the gold, right? Jupiter is the blessing. Jupiter is the abundance. Where's the real wisdom and gold in this situation that we find ourselves in at this point in time, either individually or collectively or both? Where is the gold? That's the question that you need to ask yourself, because as I often say, there is no suffering for suffering's sake. There's always a reason. The death must be followed by rebirth, but we can't have the rebirth without the death. So we have to accept it all. We have to be able to make space for it all. We have to be involved in it all. We can't just cherry pick the nice parts of life. And when you tap into the wisdom of Jupiter, okay, this is allowing you to see how things could be. It's the idealistic, optimistic, looking to the future and saying, things could be so much better if we, if we can just focus on the horizon, essentially. See if you can tap into that picture. Overnight, the moon in Libra will start to create a square aspect to the planets in Capricorn. So this is that, irritating, provocative energy that says something needs to be done here. It's trying to prompt us to take action of some kind. So when we have the square aspects to these planets, especially with Saturn there at the final degree, it could be another peak moment, certainly as we wake up. I would say coming into Thursday morning, that's when we're likely to experience, the peak of this kind of part of the moon cycle. Now, as she will have gone past her full moon phase, she's now in the waning phase of her cycle. So this is when things are reducing. This is when things are being taken away, and we can tap into that. We can say, well, okay, what is it about what's going on over here in the system, in the hierarchy, in the patriarchy, in the capitalist kind of structure that we have? What is it that we need to actually actively participate in removing at this point? We've had this time to reflect upon our values and how they need to be altered potentially. So what needs to be taken away? That could be irritating. And then as we move into Thursday, the moon then moves into Scorpio. And again, you know, the moon isn't super happy in Scorpio. Scorpio isn't, you know, a love and light kind of energy. We all have all of the planets, all of the signs in our chart. So we all have Scorpio. Scorpio is precisely where the death and rebirth process takes place. Scorpio is fearless. Scorpio goes into the darker realms of humanity where others fear to tread. It's not shocked at all. It's the part of us that can deal with death. It's the part of us that can deal with ugliness and horror and wrongness, abuse of power. And that's a big part of what's going on over there in Capricorn. Pluto, of course, being the ruler of Scorpio, bringing the Scorpio energy into the sign of Capricorn. Okay, where has power and authority been abused throughout the years in this system? It's not actually supporting the people anymore. So the moon being in Scorpio, waning, is helping us to see what needs taking away, what needs purifying, what needs to be detoxified, essentially, by putting us in touch with it. You know, we can't clean something up if we can't see it. All right. So there's going to be a lot of Pluto influence around on that day. And importantly, the nodes will arrive at 4 degrees. So currently at 5 degrees of Capricorn in Cancer, the nodes are shifting towards moving into Gemini and Sagittarius. That's where they'll start eclipses later on in the year. So they're completing the journey through these signs. Moving a degree forward to 4 degrees will mean that on Thursday also we will have a sextile from the North Node to Uranus and a trine from Uranus to the South Node. But also we're going to have connection to Chiron, the wounded healer, on this day as well, which is actually going to be a square aspect. So I feel like we may feel that one a bit more. And that's going to be around matters of health and healing. So of course, you know, you can easily join up the dots there as to what's happening. But this is a time when, you know, with Chiron in Aries, this is all about the personal wound and how the personal wound contributes to the entire woundedness of the collective, and how we can start to take some personal responsibility for that, because that's what Saturn in Capricorn is all about. The maturity, the discipline that comes with those, with that energy, is also about responsibility. We have to own our stuff. If we don't own our stuff, we're just chucking it out there in influence to everybody else. And if we need to heal, then we need to heal ourselves on an individual level. This is going to get really so much more important as we move into the following week, because then we'll have the sun moving into Aries as we reach the vernal equinox, and that's a crucial point for us. So anticipate that the Chiron core wound may be stimulated as the nodes shift into square with that, and that's a good thing. You know, that's saying it's time for us to do something about this, for the sake of everyone. Friday then, the moon continuing through Scorpio will now move into a supportive aspect with Saturn and Pluto, as it moves through Scorpio, she's going to sextile each of the planets in Capricorn. So that's facilitating any efforts that we're making to bring the change that is needed there, to remove the abuse of power, to remove the downsides of where our current structure isn't doing what it's set out to do, to provide security and stability to everyone. I kind of look at Capricorn and Cancer as the father and mother of us all. And mother is home and family, and she nurtures us and she nourishes us. She provides a safe place for us to go and rest at the end of the day. And Capricorn is out there doing the work, saying, you know, I need to provide for my family, okay? I need to keep a roof over our head. I need to keep everyone fed. I need to keep us safe, okay? So when we're looking at that through the bigger picture, this is saying, you know, Capricorn, that the structure that we've created in our society through Capricorn is really supposed to achieve those things for everyone. We're all supposed to have security of having somewhere to live, a roof over our head. We're all supposed to have the security of having food and clean water and healthcare and all of these things. And it's just, our system is completely broken because we're moving further and further and further away from that ever being a reality. So yeah, any efforts that we're making at this point to remove those things from our life that's getting in the way of us doing that, either on a personal or collective level, then this moon's going to really help you, because she's waning, she's removing. And we also, on that day, have the sun over there in Pisces in sextile aspect to Pluto as well. So we've got a lot of that kind of Pluto influence with the Scorpio moon, Pluto in Capricorn, and the sun sextile over there. So lots and lots of potent change energy. And Friday is ruled by Venus. So this is the background energy really to Friday, is all about kindness and love and connection and care and the feminine kind of yin aspects of our nature. Sunday is a biggie. We've got the moon finishing the journey in heavy old Scorpio territory, moving into the lighter area of Sagittarius. This usually gives us a bit of a lift. The moon coming into a fire sign, and it's a fire sign that's ruled by Jupiter. So more Jupiter energy, the optimism, the hope, the belief in things being better. And interestingly enough, I'm sure it's no coincidence that Jupiter will arrive at 22 degrees of Capricorn that day. Now, if you think back to January, 22 degrees is the degree of Saturn and Pluto coming together, that huge, potent trigger event that is what is behind everything this year. All right, so when the other planets are arriving at this degree in the chart, it's like the next chapter of this particular story. So if the Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn conjunction story is in the deconstruction of our current system in order to build something better from its constituent parts, what does Jupiter bring to that as it arrives into the story? Well, Jupiter isn't super comfortable in Capricorn, but Jupiter rules expansion. Now, this is where the story of my swelling face comes in. We've got Jupiter and Mars coming closer and closer together, okay? Mars rules my chart, it rules my ascendant, and the ascendant rules your face, essentially. And Mars is pain and sharpness, and so that's the rule of my face. And Jupiter expands things, so it's swollen, it's really kind of increased in size. So this is the effect of Jupiter. You know, we can make 1,000,001 predictions about how that might look, and it can be, as I am testament to, very literal. It could just be that Jupiter arriving here is just going to expand what's already happening there. And of course, what does that mean? Perhaps the spreading of the virus, the spreading of the consequences of what's trying to play out. Also, Jupiter rules long distance travel. There's one thing our Sagittarian friends like to do, it's a lot of travel. So again, that's adding to the idea of, well, that's kind of facilitating the spread, is the, you know, the amount of long distance travel that we now do. But Jupiter also brings through that expansive quality the wisdom, the philosophy. And so what I'm hoping is that in that process, that we can sort of philosophize more about this situation rather than getting caught up on an egoic level, which is the Mars stuff. You know, or let's just use this as an opportunity to poke fun at people for buying toilet paper, because that's how they're channeling their desperate survival shock that's going on down here. Let's not get caught up in that kind of very base level stuff. Let's actually look at the bigger philosophy of what's trying to take place here and construct our own ideas about, well, what could be the phoenix that rises from the ashes of this situation? You know, Jupiter is the golden phoenix. So if we start to focus our attention and our energies on what comes after, you know, that's the whole purpose of things going wrong, so that something better can come along. In Capricorn's a bit, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but we don't really want to look at where it's broken. We're being forced to look at where it's broken right now, or we're being forced to do that. So Jupiter's saying, but it's okay, because actually, if those flat tires get taken off, we can put some nice new ones on. Or we could take out the old engine and we could replace it with something far more efficient. Okay, so we just got to face things. And this takes me back to the full moon that we're in today. Just got to kind of face the reality of our situation, that we are part spirit and part kind of just flesh animals, and where do we sort of find the balance in between? So that's pretty much all I've got for you. I do believe that as we move into the following week, things are going to get a little bit more potent. You know, we'll have Jupiter really tightening into the point where Saturn and Pluto conjuncted. We'll have Mars then joining in. We'll also have the Sun moving onto the Aries point, the very first degree of Aries at the vernal equinox. And this is all kind of an intensification of what we're seeing that we're really building up to this week. So I think this week is a very good time to give some contemplation to what is actually going on and start to just join up the dots in the larger sky, as it were. I hope it's helpful to you. I hope it's helpful to you. Thanks so much for watching. Please give me a like, a love, a comment, a share. Do whatever you can to support me if this is of value to you. And hopefully I will see you next week. Much love. Bye.